Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I'm back with another hand from a $10,000 buy-in tournament from Florida for PokerNews.com. Thank you very much for being here. Hope you're enjoying all the news that Poker News brings to you, and also a little bit of strategy. So, folds around to the hijack seat, who raises to 1,200, and I get pocket threes on the button. I think both calling and three betting are fine. I don't really prefer one play over the other. If the players in the blinds are particularly good, I'm going to be more inclined to re-raise. And if the players in the blinds are particularly bad, I'm going to be more inclined to call. Bad meaning they're going to call too much pre-flop, pay me off too often post-flop when I make a set, etc. But if they're going to be good, then you don't really want them in the pot. You're not going to get value from them. And at that point, you're going to get more value just from re-raising a lot of your hands and playing bigger pots in position, because whenever you are the aggressor and you're in position and presumably you have a range advantage, that's going to work out for you. So, call or re-raise. I decide to call this time. And we see a pot heads up, or see a flop heads up. It comes 9-4-3, all spades, so that's kind of a bummer. But we get a set, which is not a bummer. So now, pot is 3,450, and my opponent bets 1,000. This is a pretty rough spot, because if I call, I'm giving my opponent great odds to see the turn with all of his spades. And clearly he's going to have lots and lots of spades in his range. So that's not so cool. The problem with raising, though, is if I raise and get re-raised, or even called, my opponent's going to have a reasonably strong range, and I don't know if a spade is good or bad for him. So this is a tough one. I think in general I should probably raise just because my opponent did bet so small. If my opponent instead potted it, I would be way more inclined to just call, because then my opponent's not giving himself a good price with the one spade hands. But when he bets 1,000, I think I need to raise mainly just for value and protection. It's a very tough spot, because normally sets are very, very good and you're just thrilled to get it in. Like say it was 9-4-3, two spades, I'm just happy to get all my money in. My house, my car, my children, whatever. Just put it all in. If they have a better set, then you lose. So, but here, it's very easy for the opponent just to have a flush, and I'm in bad shape. And even then, if he does just have ace of spades, he has plenty of equity. So you have to be very careful in these spots. I decided to call, and I don't really like this. I think I need to just go ahead and raise. Turns a four of clubs, which is fantastic. And now the opponent bets small again. Now we're not worried about getting outdrawn so much, unless the river is a 4, which is not going to happen too often. I suppose a 9 isn't great either, but you're not really that worried about a 9 here. Like, if the river's a 9 and my opponent bets, I'm definitely just going to call, assuming I call the turn. Again, though, should we raise? Now, where we were worried about protecting our hand on the flop, and also protecting our stack, which is why I ended up calling, now I want to get all the money in, and I want to build a pot. Whenever you're playing very deep stacked, one of the main concerns you're going to have is, how do I build a pot without looking like I just have the absolute nuts? Because if you appear as if you have the nuts, and your opponent thinks you have the nuts, well, they're going to fold. And in this scenario, it's quite easy for most people to understand that if they have a hand like Jack of spades, 10 of clubs, it's not a very good hand, right? So if they bet, as this opponent may do with a bluff, like Jack of spades, 10 of clubs, they're going to fold if you raise, especially if you raise big. However, what would I like to do here if I was bluffing with something like ace of diamonds, king of spades? First, would I even want to bluff? Probably not. What if I had king of spades, queen of diamonds? I may want to bluff that one, because that hand's not going to win a showdown nearly as often. So if I had that hand, I'd probably still just call it, just because the opponent is giving me such a good price, and I don't really want to turn down that great of a price. In general, you're going to find with your draws that whenever you're facing a very small bet, like we are here, you don't really want to ruin that. And an easy way to ruin that is to raise and then get called or re-raise, because then you're just making the pot big when you are a very clear underdog. So it's a spot where I really shouldn't be raising very much. So if I'm not raising very often, that's a good reason to call with this hand too. But at the same time, I think most players are not going to understand that as my strategy, and they just may think I'm blasting it anyway with king of spades for fun. So I think we need to raise for value. But I just call. So twice I could have raised, and I did not. I'm fine with a flop call, but I think this turn situation is a spot where I do just need to raise. A lot of people get in their minds, and maybe I did at this moment too, that I really don't want the opponent to fold because he's probably just dead, right? If the opponent's just dead, then you definitely want to keep them in. But it's so easy for the opponent to have a hand like an overpair with a spade that's never folding to a raise, or ace of spades with a king, which is never folding, or just straight up a flush that's never folding, right? And I really want to play for stacks, and the way you play for stacks is by raising, not by slow playing, especially when your opponents are betting small. So my flop call, I think, was at least reasonable, but this turn call, I think, is not good, inexcusable. Inexcusable? Not good. So I should have raised, for sure. River is a 6, which is great. Opponent now bets 2,000 again. At this point, you can be pretty sure your opponent has a marginal made hand. If the opponent did have a flush, he would be very likely to go for a larger bet size, just because that's what people do. Most people don't want to bet tiny here because it's so easy for me just to have a 9 that's going to pay every time, or even an overpair that's going to pay every time, or a bad flush that's going to pay. So the opponent should definitely bet bigger if he has a good hand. So when he does bet small, it indicates to me mostly marginal made hands. So what are marginal made hands here? And that varies from player to player. Some people are going to think 9-8 is a marginal made hand, but I think it's probably too weak to value bet. Some people are going to think pocket kings are a marginal made hand, which in reality could probably be value bet for a larger size, just because then I can call with all sorts of worse stuff. So if the opponent does have a hand like that, I need to raise. Obviously, I could be beat. I could be against 9s or 6s or 4-3. I think all those hands may play in this manner. But again, I think they'd probably be betting bigger on the turn in the river because they want to get value too. So let's think about what I look like from my opponent's point of view. I call the flop bet, call the turn bet, and now here we are on the river. If I'm sitting here with a busted flush draw, king of spades, queen of diamonds, would I ever raise? Maybe. If I do raise, would I make it small or big? Well, I would definitely make it big, right? Because we're trying to get the opponent to fold out pocket 10s or ace 9. So if I'm going to be raising with that hand from time to time, which I may or may not do against this particular player, but it's certainly a play that I would consider, we need to do that with some of our nut hands too. So I think I like a pretty big raise here. It's about 10,000. I think that's going to get called by the overpairs pretty much every time. I think a 9 will call it a decent amount of the time. Clearly flushes call it every time. And if I then get jammed on by the opponent, I would fold. Because then I don't expect many people to be running big bluffs. And at that point, like even an ace of spades is not a good hand to bluff. And normally when you're running big bluffs like that, you want to block the full houses. And that means the opponent needs to have like 9-6 as a bluff. And 9-6 is a hand the opponent's probably not even opening because it's not a very good hand, right? So I like a raise and I like a big raise here. Wow, 20,000. Huge. I think 20,000 is probably too big, although it sure looks bluffy, doesn't it? Like I said, I think 10,000 is probably a little bit better. That's going to get called almost every time. But hey, there have been plenty of times where I've been playing live poker, and you can look and tell this guy here in seat 3 has aces or has kings. And if they have aces or kings, will they ever fold it? A lot of people, they can't fold aces or kings. They just call every time, especially when a lot of obvious draws missed. And here, notice 6-5 missed, although got a crappy pair. And also all the busted spade draws missed. So I like the raise. This could just be the best size, really. You're going to find that in general, when your range is a lot of really nut hands and also a lot of total garbage, a big raise size with a balanced proportion of that is often optimal. But it's not necessarily ideal in live poker because some people will always fold to a big overraise and some people will always call a big overraise. So if you know you're going to get called every time, just stop bluffing, right? And if you know they're going to fold every time, well then only raise big as a bluff. Anyway, I go 20K here. So now what should the opponent call with? Well, if he has, let's just say aces, for example. If he has aces with the ace of spades, it may be a fold. The opponent here really doesn't want to have a spade now because if he has a spade, like the ace of spades or king of spades or queen of spades, those are the obvious hands that I would call flop, call turn, and then maybe bluff river, right? So if he does have those cards, ace, king, or queen, he should be way more inclined to fold to the raise because that blocks a large chunk of my bluffing range, which means I'm going to be way more tilted towards value. If he has ace of diamonds, ace of hearts, I think he just needs to call. What else? What else can we say? Not a lot. Sure is a crappy spot if the opponent does have an overpair, though. One interesting thing about this is that I did not raise the flop or the turn, and I think a lot of people are going to assume that I'm going to raise the flop or the turn with boats. So would I blast it like this on the river with a flush? Definitely not a bad flush. I might do it with ace of spades and a blank of spades. But maybe the opponent just doesn't think I have very many nut hands in this scenario because I did not raise the flop or the turn whenever the opponent bet small. Anyway, we blasted it. We're probably not going to get called. Oh, but we do get called. That's good. And wow, ace of spades, ace of clubs. One of the hands I think probably need to be folded because, again, those block my obvious bluffs. Fun hand. That's going to be it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know on Twitter at Jonathan Little. You can go there. I very frequently give away lots and lots of free poker videos. I give away free ebooks. So follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Little. Good luck in your games, and be sure to check back next week on Poker News for another fun poker hand. Thanks for watching.